morning, everybody, or evening to most of my fellow YouTubers, and depending on their areas, it's Movie Lover Warren 20 here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review, and this is for yet another film that just recently came out. Is actually part of an iconic Agent franchise, and is actually the final entry in this version of the character for a certain actor. Yes, today I'm going to be reviewing No Time to Die. So guys, I just saw No Time to Die last night. Or I may recap this. Well, at first I was never too a big James Bond fan, but I do love the Daniel Craig films. I mean, I would rank, like, especially Skyfall. Skyfall would have to be my #1 favorite movie of this series. And so, this one is actually, this was actually, believe it or not, guys, this film, No Time to Die, was, I think, the very first movie to be delayed by the coronavirus. Like, it was supposed to come out April 2020, but then was at the time when I didn't know about the coronavirus to November 2020. And I just first thought it was because they were afraid of losing to Trolls World Tour, which is a little confusing, which is what I first thought anyways. I was like, really? They're afraid of losing to some kiddie sequel? Sequel aimed for little kids? Okay. And then I realized why it exactly was once March 2020 was when the coronavirus happened. And then I realized why it was delayed. And I soon realized what was soon about to come for the rest of 2020's films. So yeah, unfortunately, this was the first movie to be delayed by the coronavirus. And like many of them, it was delayed several times. All the way up to October 8th, 2021. When MGM just decided to just give up and just release the movie anyway, because the delays were costing them a lot of money. So they had no other choice. If the movie was a flop, no flop, it was not going to matter anymore. Plus, this was kind of Daniel Craig's final James Bond movie anyway, so. But with that being said, I saw the movie last night, and I gotta say, I really loved it. Was it as good as Skyfall and Casino Royale? Well, no, but it was definitely better than Spectre and Quantum of Solace. I would put this in maybe third place, if I'm ranking the Craig series. Yeah, absolutely enjoyed it. It was a perfect send-off to Daniel Craig, and here's what the movie is about. Alright, so the movie's plot in this film is Bond has left active service following the events of Spectre and has joined a tranquil life in Jamaica. His peace is short-lived when his old friend Felix Leiter from the CIA turns up asking for help. Then the mission to rescue a kidnapped scientist turns out to be far more treacherous than expected, leading Bond onto the trail of a mysterious villain armed with dangerous new technology. Yeah, that's what the movie's about. So, after all the coronavirus delays, it felt as though we were never going to get to see this, but it's finally been released, and it's finally here. Question is, was it worth the wait? The answer is yes. Sure, not really what I was expecting. Of course, it's action-packed, dramatic, and high-octane, but it actually boosts a good story, perhaps shows us a slightly different side to the character. Yeah. For those accustomed to the James Bond cinematic formula, you'll notice quite a few differences, like beginning with the opening scenes, traditionally breathtaking action kicks of the film, but this time, a shift in tone and style serves up a tension-filled opening that occurs 5 years prior to the rest of the story. It takes a few minutes before we get the first true action sequence. Of course, we must, keep in mind, we are dealing with the retired James Bond in this movie, don't worry. And thankfully, it's not like how Endgame did Fat 4. In fact, there's already a replacement, 007, who's played by Lashana Lynch, by the way, who's who unfortunately played in Captain Marvel as Carol Danvers' friend. But thankfully she's much better in this movie than her character in Captain Marvel. I will say that. Because she packs quite an attitude and skill set easily. Like the film delivers this really good personal story for James Bond, the characters that are around him. It feels like a big deal, and the chemistry between the characters is what drives it through. And things are just improved from some of the other films. The issue is that there's just issue with issue there is that there's just too much here, and some just doesn't really make sense. Like take the bad guy's plan. Oh, I'm gonna get to it in a bit. It makes zero sense, and it makes it hard to care about the element of the film. The story could have been tightened up and shortened the runtime, which would have benefited the overall film. Yeah. One bad quality is that the film went on a little bit too long, but this was like the final Daniel Craig movie, so I can kind of predict a very long runtime, about 163 minutes. The script is great here, and there's some real drama here that adds real depth to the characters and their individual stories. But the playfulness and slight bits of humor are there too, and it really builds this great script that will keep you invested in this really long film. The action scenes are also great, and they've been the biggest strength of Craig's time in the role, and they are once again great with the stakes being really high, and the stunts really delivering. But the biggest issue in the film is the length. It's nearly 3 hours long, and it really doesn't need to be. If the plot had been more cohesive, you could have shaved plenty of time off of the film. But despite an overly long runtime, an exposition heavy second act, and a terribly stereotyped villain with unclear motivations. Yeah, speaking of the villain, guys, I didn't mind Rami Malek. Rami Malek was okay. He wasn't terrible, but I wasn't too big of a fan of his villain. Really, I thought he was just I thought he was a little too stereotyped, and he didn't really have much good motivations. His motivations were very unclear. I mean, take Javier Bardem in Skyfall, for example. Like, he came nowhere close to being as intimidating or enjoyable as Javier Bardem's villain in Skyfall. But I mean, he was he was definitely better than the villain in Quantum Solace, and I will admit that, but I just wasn't a big fan of his character. The emotional and comparative narrative sets up a powerful third act boosted by an epic score, and speaking of, I won't spoil much about what happens at the end, but the end of the movie was probably the first time I cried in the theater since the end of Endgame. Like, the whole theater was just silently in tears, like no one was speaking a single word in that very final scene. And I will admit that. So if you are a James Bond fan and you really do want to see this, I definitely do recommend seeing it, but be ready to possibly be in complete tears at the end, because I sure was. Yeah, but Kerry Joji fucking brilliantly directed a movie packed with phenomenal performances that will leave no viewer different. Like, I have massive praise for the outstanding ensemble cast, especially, I think almost, even though Ryan Malek's character wasn't that good, I think everyone else in the cast was pretty good. I mean, Ryan Malek was good for what he was given. It's just his villain was just not very enjoyable. I was just not a big fan of his character. But everyone still in the cast was actually pretty good for what they were given. I think it's the third best James Bond movie. I mean, third best Daniel Craig James Bond movie, I mean. And if you're wondering, if they reboot James Bond, am I gonna go watch it? No, I'm not gonna go watch any reboot of James Bond, because this film to me was the perfect send off to the Daniel Craig James Bond, and that role's gonna be impossible to fill for them. It's gonna be very hard to fill for whoever takes his place next, but I don't think I'll go watch the reboot. I mean, this was kind of the good end to Bond for me, and I kind of want to leave it there. But yeah. So I give a humble thank you to Daniel Craig, for being one of the best James Bonds out there, and managing to have a very good run. But yeah, that's it for my review of No Time to Die, and here's how I'm going to rank it. I am going to give No Time to Die an 8 out of 10. And there we go. that's my review for No Time to Die. So, you're wondering, how am I going to rank these Daniel Craig James Bond films? Well, I would say number one best is Skyfall, then Casino Royale, third place No Time to Die, fourth place Spectre, and the weakest one for me is most easily Quantum of Solace. That's how I rank the Daniel Craig Bond films. I will even post my ranking in the comments down below. And I want to know in the comments below, what did you think of the movie, if you have seen it? And then, yeah. But now that's 2 blockbusters down this month and 2 more to go. Because next week is finally Halloween Kills. And then the week after Halloween Kills is Doom. So wow, that'll be perfect. But until then, that'll be it for this review. Thank you all for watching. And if you like this, want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Movie Lover 120.